All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Have you ever actually stopped to wonder what makes a story genuinely funny? Not just a quick throwaway joke, but a story that actually makes you laugh out loud. Today we're going to look at the mechanics of what makes us laugh by analyzing author Soman Chainani's wild, real-life anecdotes. Chainani is a fantasy author who weaves these really deep strains of comedy into his work, and we're going to break down exactly how he does it. To really grasp Chainani's unique brand of humor, we've got to start with a basic question. What are the universal comedy triggers? I'm talking about the stuff that supposedly works on absolutely everyone, from a bustling city in Europe all the way to a remote tribe in the Amazon. What is the baseline?
Well, according to a list Chainani dug up, it's things like, hitting someone with a cooking utensil, or slipping on ice, maybe a swift fart delivered in absolute silence, or inexplicably adults dressed as twins. Now, this list represents your expected universal baseline of physical and situational comedy. It's safe, right? But today, we're going to see how Chainani pivots hard away from this baseline to a much darker, far more surprising personal style of storytelling. So, Section 1, the element of contrast, and how subverting the expected completely changes the game. Let's kick things off with how mixing up a character's age or status with their actions flips a classic trope entirely on its head. I mean, a kid falling down on the ice, that's just standard slapstick. Kids fall, they bounce right back, it's a little funny. But jump over to Solomon's reality. The actual punchline lands when we find out he was attempting a full-blown, Olympic-style triple axel jump in the middle of a concrete parking garage. No skates, no training, and he hit a pipe so hard his forehead had to be stitched closed. The contrast that makes it absolutely hilarious? He wasn't a goofy kid. The guy was 23 years old.
Contrast also works absolute wonders when you pit pretense against passion. Picture this, a super stuffy Manhattan dinner party about 20 years ago. You've got a table packed with freshly graduated 21-year-old Ivy League consultants. They're going around the room, Harvard economics, Yale banking, just incredibly pretentious, right? Then it's the turn of a girl named Mariah, and she introduces herself exactly like this. My name is Mariah, I went to Wellesley, I majored in art history, and I'm unemployed.
Naturally, the Ivy League bots at the table are totally scandalized, and the host politely asks, why she chose that major. But instead of giving some standard, boring answer, she launches into this wildly unexpected, passionate, borderline erotic monologue. She talks about ditching the boring economics section of the library for art history, claiming the book's smell of history and institution and patriarchy and rebellion. She literally describes pressing her body against these massive library books, soaking in their power in a fit of primal lust.
And then, after delivering this intensely vivid rant to a room full of rigid consultants, she just takes a casual sip of her drink and hits them with this completely deadpan line. You want to know why I majored in a field that would leave me unemployed? There's your answer. It's brilliant. Breaking the insane tension of that rant with such a flat, factual punchline, that is comedic genius. She uses contrast perfectly to completely shatter the stuffy vibe of that dinner party.
Moving on to Section 2, embracing the absurd. This is all about finding humor in chaos and darkness.
So let's talk about absurdity, starting with the deeply tragic comic story of a ludicrously unfit baby calf named Fatima Joe. See, Chainani has this habit of buying the absolute most downtrodden animals at local auctions, which drives his farmer partner crazy. And this calf? She was the physical manifestation of absurd. She had this flaming red fur that stuck straight up like it had been tumble-dried, missing patches from mites, wobbly knees, a droopy ear, a lazy eye, and a surprisingly big ass. So Chainani's partner explicitly warned him not to get attached to a sick animal that was definitely going to die. But Chainani bottle-fed her anyway. And then, defying literally all expectations, his partner caved, started feeding her premium milk and grass, and she actually grew sturdy and strong.
See, you did it, Soman tells him. And then, exactly 2 days later, she died. No cause, no reason whatsoever, just keeled over mid-meal. Now, the dark humor lands here, right in the deadpan reality of that sudden loss. Soman was crushed, sure, but the true comedic twist comes from his partner's reaction. He was absolutely furious, screaming about how this calf drained his bank account for a month just to die. But, as Soman points out, for a farmer, spending money is exactly how they show love. That angry outburst about a drained bank account was secretly just his partner showing deep, genuine affection for that bizarre little calf.
Absurdity can also escalate into pure, unadulterated chaos. Let's break down a little event Soman fondly calls the Missouri Standoff. So, Soman had this newborn, isolated sheep that he used to just carry around on his shoulder. Totally normal, right? Well, one day, his partner gets pulled over by a Missouri cop for a missing back license plate. The cop is on speakerphone, demanding proof of insurance. Salman has to put the sleeping sheep down on the seat so he can check his phone for the digital insurance card. But wait, it gets better. They also have a massive Bernese mountain dog named Lady in the car, who immediately decides this is the perfect time to chase the lamb.
Notice how the pacing here completely drives the comedy as things escalate. Right at 0 seconds, he's frantically swiping through his phone while the cop is listening in on speaker. At 5 seconds, the lamb wakes up, lets out a full-volume bleat, and literally runs for the hills. At 10 seconds, Soman is yelping, chasing the dog, who is currently chasing the sheep. And finally, at 15 seconds, in a sheer panic just to stall the cop, he accidentally sends his expired auto insurance from the previous year. So you've got a guy chasing a sheep, fighting off a giant dog, and arguing with law enforcement all at the exact same moment. Naturally, the cop points out the insurance is expired, so Shaman just yells into the phone, "I'm holding a sheep." And this is where we get the absolute perfect comedic release. His partner leans over and speaks super gently to the very confused police officer, saying he writes fantasy novels. He's not quite right in the head. It's a perfectly timed, deadpan explanation that instantly diffuses all that absurd tension. The cop actually just lets them go with a warning.
All right, Section 3, Slapstick versus Storytelling, focusing on the human reaction.
We already established that falling down is a universal comedy trigger. But let's directly compare basic physical slapstick with character-driven storytelling, using a school visit that went completely off the rails. Soman is doing a presentation for 600 kids in a massive auditorium. He calls this hyperactive 5th grader, Ethan, up to the stage. Ethan sprints down the aisle, trips on the very last step, flies forward, and just takes Soman entirely out, like a full-on drive-by tackle. Now, a sweaty 5th grader flattening a grown man? That's physically funny. It's classic slapstick. But the real joke, the true character comedy, is what happens next. They just need to stand up and brush it off, right? But Ethan refuses to get up.
Instead of bouncing back up, Ethan stays face down, bottom up, stuck in this weird yoga plow pose on the floor. He covers his eyes and literally starts sniveling because the older 8th grader saw him fall. Solomon gets right in his face and whispers to get up, but Ethan just shakes his head and howls, "Shame." That guttural, dramatic cry of a mortified middle schooler, that is what makes the story unforgettable. It reminds us that the best comedy doesn't come from the physical fall itself, it comes entirely from the bizarre, incredibly human reaction to that fall.
Which brings us to Section 4, Lessons on Comedic Timing, where we extract the mechanics. So what actionable lessons can we actually pull from these wild stories to understand how humor is constructed? Distilling them down gives us a literal masterclass. Number 1, subvert what's expected. A kid tripping is expected. A 23-year-old busting his head doing a dryland triple axel is hilarious. Number 2, escalate the absurdity logically. That Missouri standoff built layer by frantic layer until it exploded. Number 3, contrast your characters and tones. Toss a passionate art history major into a room full of stiff Ivy League bots. And finally, know exactly when to drop a deadpan line. The sudden, matter-of-fact demise of Fatima Joe proves that delivering a dark reality totally straight is often the sharpest punchline you can throw.
And you know what's so great? This exact analytical framework applies to everyday dark humor, too. Take this comment from a reader named Sam. He saw an exterminator's van driving by, and it had this cute, adorable little rat as its logo. Sam asks his mom, shouldn't they make the rat look horrific if they're trying to sell pest control? His mom calmly replies that an adorable rat is just more attractive to the potential customer. Without missing a beat, Sam hits back with a deadpan contrast. Wait a minute, attracted? Are you trying to tell me you have a rodent fetish? It is the exact same comedic mechanics at play.
Which leaves us with the ultimate question for you to take away from this explainer today. We all run into surprises, little dangers, and completely absurd moments in our everyday lives. But how you frame them, that makes all the difference in the world. How are you going to use these mechanics, timing, contrast, and absurdity to share the ridiculous moments of your own life? The next time you have a funny story to tell, don't just list out the facts. Think like a storyteller. Where's the contrast? Where's that perfect deadpan drop? Go out there and find your punchline.